the advice I would give is just be open to the research, because you're going to see the quality of service. You're going to see the benefit within your families by collaborating in that research capacity. And these are such exciting opportunities because it gives you such valuable insights to the community that you're working within.
Welcome to Collaborative Endeavors, a podcast about how scientists from different areas of research come together to tackle big health challenges, leading to better therapies and healthier communities. For nearly 6 years, Dr. Mary Katani has been working with colleagues at Rocky Mountain Human Services, home to the largest early intervention program in the Denver metro area. Dr. Katani is an associate professor in UIC's College of Applied Health Sciences and also directs UIC's Children's Participation in Environment Research Lab, also known as CPERL. Also supporting the lab's efforts is Vera Kalin, a research assistant and PhD candidate in rehabilitation sciences. Katani and Kalin began their careers as occupational therapists working with children with developmental needs, which can result from conditions like brain injuries, cerebral palsy, or Down syndrome. They also work with these children's families to help them sustain meaningful daily life. For the last decade, CPERL has conducted rehabilitation research to build evidence for clinical practice, including early intervention. Authorized by law, early intervention is a service system that helps babies and toddlers with developmental delays or disabilities and is available in every state and territory of the U.S. as part of Part C of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Dr. Katani described how challenges surrounding early intervention services led to the collaboration with Rocky Mountain Human Services, which I will refer to as RMHS from here on out.
We run a small but mighty research lab in Chicago. We're partnered with brilliant practitioners in Colorado, where our lab used to be housed up until about 6 years ago. It's getting harder and harder for families to become eligible for early intervention services. Services become more restricted. It heightens the need to really think about value-based early intervention and how can we deliver our services in ways that maximize the resources we have, that prevent provider burnout, but that also improve the experience that children and families have to be engaged with the set of services when they are eligible, and to do it as efficiently and effectively as possible so that they're able to engage and adhere to the service plan as it's designed. And then we hypothesize that when we are able to deliver high-value services, that those services will result in better outcomes. When I think about this work, I think about as we design more options, and we try to begin introducing a broader set of options into the service system, we're trying to improve the value of those services and how families can access those services and how providers can have flexibility in how they deliver those services without compromising quality. And it's part of that larger line of work to really build out the evidence for high-quality early intervention.
To address this problem, Dr. Katani and her team innovated by examining the use of an electronic tool called the Young Children's Participation and Environment Measure, or YCPEM. Since 2008, multiple studies have developed and tested YCPEM's validity, reliability, feasibility, and acceptability as a parent-completed survey that captures a family's expertise on their child's participation results. Vera Kalin explained the rationale behind the tool and what it can accomplish.
The tool that we are implementing in the service context in this project is a tool that assesses participation. So it looks at how often a child attends certain activities and how involved the child is in those activities, and whether the parent desires a change in those activities. And the tool also assesses environmental barriers and what environmental features are supportive. This information can help to focus a lot on the child's participation, so an outcome that matters to families and that matters to their daily life. So this tool can help to set goals and to set those goals with priorities that the families mention and that are important to them. When we think about our own life, we participate in many activities. Like I participate in morning routines at the beginning of my day. I participate in having breakfast with my husband, for example. I participate in playing with my child. So we do a lot of those activities and participate in those activities. And so does a child. My daughter participates, even though she's really young, she participates in dressing. She participates in diaper change. She participates in sleeping routines. So those are things that we do in life and that matter to us in life. And that can change between people, right? Something that's really important to me might not be so important to you. So we all participate in different activities, and those activities have different meanings to us. And that's what we mean with outcomes that matter. So it's really something that matters to me. For me, it's really important that I can play with my child, for example. Or for me, it's really important that my child has another child to play with. With this tool, we try to capture what activity is really meaningful for this particular family and what this particular family wants, or what participation activity they want to change.
Dr. Catani elaborated.
If we plug that beautiful description of outcomes that matter to families into like an early intervention scenario. So like if you have a family, a parent, maybe they've gone to the pediatrician's office for a checkup and they do that developmental screen, and then that developmental screen gets kind of a red flag. And the pediatrician says, we might want to reach out. I'd like to refer you into early intervention to see if you might be eligible for services based on some of the developmental concerns that you're expressing here today during our visit. And so then the parent gets referred, and the entire gamut of assessments is based on the child's development, their skills, like what can they and can they not do. And that's how we determine whether they're eligible for services. But for the parent that's going through that process, they're thinking in the back of their heads, right, if I'm going to be part of early intervention services, what is this information about my child's development going to mean in terms of what's my life going to be like? How are we going to get through a day? Like, what's a meaningful day going to look like? Am I going to have the same experiences as a family as I thought I would, or as I would want to? And so these things then don't necessarily get solicited in designing services unless we're very intentional.
This is where the partnership with Rocky Mountain Human Services is key. In order to demonstrate YCPEM's practical value, Dr. Catani's team needed to see how it and its accompanying decision support tool would fit into the everyday activities of a human service organization. Appropriately, RMHS's mission is to embrace the power of community to support individuals and families in creating their future. For this agency that values evidence-based practices, integrating with an academic research team seemed like a natural next step. Shannon Banks, an early intervention engagement specialist at RMHS, described the organization and its approach to early intervention for Denver area children and their families.
Rocky Mountain Human Services is a very large organization, so we really support individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities across the lifespan. So we are always looking to grow and using our human services expertise to meet the needs in our community. And it's part of our mission statement to be person-centered in providing the services that we deliver to our families, our kiddos, and clients across the board. So in this particular project, to be able to give families an opportunity before a meeting with their intervention team to think through some of the topics that are going to be discussed and give them an opportunity to put on paper or, electronically their voice and what they want to see happen. I think it was a really awesome partnership because then we're able to go into meetings with our families with that focus and lens that we want to hear what their concerns and priorities are and be able to create a service plan and match them with a provider that is not only going to address the developmental needs of the child, but also be a good fit in the daily life of this family so that everybody feels part of the team and that so the services are really individualized and geared to that family and that individual child.
Jamie Bain, an early intervention service coordinator at RMHS, plays a critical role in individualizing these services on behalf of both the agency and the study team. As a service coordinator, Jamie is the point person for families from the initial evaluation stage through the time they no longer require support. One of her responsibilities is receiving YCPEM reports from the children's families and integrating that feedback into the service plan.
Once families actually fill out the paperwork and have sort of gone through the process online, the reports are generated, and then I will get the report back from one of our program assistants. We would then utilize that information that families have included on the report to then integrate the information into our annual plan. So that's kind of how we sort of integrate the two programs together and the project in there. And essentially what that looks like is taking the information from the YCPEM report and using it to then help us to direct what the family's concerns and questions may be about maybe next steps, or maybe help us to focus on maybe where they want their kids to participate more in. And that's really kind of helped us to generate some additional conversation about like where the family priorities really lie. These certainly families who maybe have had more of an interest in helping having their kids participate more in maybe those day-to-day routines. So maybe it's, diapering or getting their kids to be able to feed themselves with silverware. And so some of that stuff kind of comes up just kind of naturally through the report. Sometimes it's through maybe notes that the family has included. But what I find is that just a lot of that information is really helpful to help us then drive the conversation about what are their next steps going to look like? What are those goals going to look like really to help with our child's development and being able to address those family goals or concerns? I think it's really changed how I've approached working with some families as far as just being able to make sure that I am cognizant about making sure that their voice is being heard during meetings. A lot of times we may have therapists who may have a little bit of a stronger voice and say, I really think this is a good next step. And families are like, okay, that's great. If that's what she says, we'll go with her because she's the expert. But it doesn't always necessarily work that way as far as really what the family wants. And so it's really been helpful for us to be able to utilize the information to then break it down and identify, okay, these are really what the family's needs are. How can we also incorporate these needs to then into the plan to make sure that the plan is a little bit more meaningful for them? So for me, it's just been a little bit of a shift in thinking and making sure that not only the families who are participating, but then my other families that I work with, that we're kind of making sure we're including everybody and inviting everyone to the table to make sure that they have a voice and not necessarily just that they don't feel like it's just the professionals who are driving this meeting, because that's not really how it should work. So I think that's been a really great opportunity just to kind of step back and do that.
Like many academic community collaborations, the road to this partnership was not without its challenges. At the same time this project first received funding from the National Institutes of Health, RMHS was one of the early adopters of an innovative state-mandated initiative aimed at improving how they focus their services across the state of Colorado. This change in climate and its downstream impact on RMHS's workload meant the partnership's recruitment efforts would get off to a rocky start. Pun intended. Here's Dr. Catani.
But what we did is we paused. We hit the pause button on our project. And while we hadn't been funded to address this issue of workload and how to make this research project fit within workload parameters at that time, we ended up having an opportunity to reflect and really put onto paper the lessons that we were learning. And what we ended up doing from there is that gave birth to the design of a research group that we co-designed together. And so we almost had to build the house that we were going to be doing our partnership in. And we weren't funded by the grant to build the house, but we did that work. And that's why we are where we are today, is by doing that invisible work to build the house that we wanted to be in, to partner and live together in for a long time.
A critical part of this house, as Dr. Catani put it, was designing the role of an on-site contact who could oversee the team of service coordinators in addition to managing communications with the Chicago-based research team and handling study data. This is part of Lindsay Kuznicki's role as an early intervention supervisor at RMHS.
First, I have to say that we couldn't be luckier to have the team that we get to work with. We all value, responsiveness and acknowledgement and ownership. We both really work hard to ensure that the research project is at the forefront of the work that we do each week. But Vera is the one who typically joins us at our monthly meetings to check in with our service coordinators, see what the challenges or the highs and lows were of the month that they received the YCPEM. A nice balance too between our expertise being really more on that case management side while they're focused more on the research requirements. And so when I first joined this team, I didn't really have a very strong background in research. And so this has been such a wonderful opportunity for me to learn from them and vice versa from us and our wonderful service coordinators who have just taken this project and really run with it. Vera is very helpful in listening and really incorporates our natural process and how can we bring that survey, that YCPEM data into those meetings so that it feels natural to our service coordinators and to our families. Because it's so important for the work that we do on our end that the family's voice is first and foremost.
Vera added,
What's been especially meaningful to me is that we co-designed the intervention so that we could make sure that what we're doing is relevant for the practitioner and really fits their workflow and their context. And when I think about what I would advise others, is what has been really helpful for me is to have coordinator at site. So have someone like Lindsay who coordinates all the tasks on their side. So that is not only helpful for like a coordination perspective, it really makes us feel like we both own that project, so that project belongs to both of us. Maybe it's because I was this rocky star, maybe that's needed to have such a good collaboration. It was really nice to see how they're on their side also were really like, they didn't want to give up on this project. They were like, no, even though we have these challenges now, we're going to do this. And I think we learned a lot together despite those challenges, or maybe because of those challenges. And yeah, we got far, which is great to see.
As the team members described, this partnership has been fortunate that the unforeseen challenges in its infancy led to a robust, long-term collaboration that is not only beneficial, but a point of pride for all involved. Shannon and Lindsay from RMHS shared some of the lessons they've learned throughout the process.
We want to be evidence-based in doing what's best for our families and kiddos. And we get that information from the research and that side of the equation. So definitely a mutual beneficial relationship can be found within those partnerships. And I think it's super helpful to have, the practical implementation of it. And Vera and the team, they were just so wonderful of being like, here's what we need to get done. And our goals for the research side of it, and very clear on like what that looked like and what they were needing, but would sit down and spend a whole meeting going through how can we integrate the tool and the research side of it into what our coordinators were doing, or even with the recruiter that we used on staff. Vera and I got together and talked about what would make most sense timing-wise with the workflow of what coordinators are doing. And I think that just made it really accessible for our staff to be able to participate and engage in something that is so meaningful and helpful and will hopefully expand down the road.
There can never necessarily feel like a good time to take on an additional project for an organization because we're always constantly moving forward, trying to find those best practice avenues and trying to stay current and relevant with the needs of the community. And so by naturally having this project come in as an organization that really appreciates and values evidence-based practices, this was kind of like a natural next step for us. I feel like we've always valued research because you really can't make operational decisions without understanding where you're starting from. And so I just really appreciate the approach that we've taken because it is more direct. It comes from the data. We're seeing it. And so having that evidence-based component has just, I think, really improved us as an agency. And so to know that we are dealing with developmental delays and that we've got the 0 to 3 time frame to get in there to make the largest impact and have the parents be empowered to provide the support to their child to shrink the delay or address the diagnosis or meet the need, it really is such an incredible thing.
Dr. Catani also reflected on what she has gained from the project.
And I think in early intervention, we're often underfunded, working on shoestring budgets, whether we're in research or practice. And I think that working together, we've been able to negotiate and make very smart decisions about, sort of building our house or building our community to be able to create practice. And the ultimate goal is to make practice as best as it can be. Extremely rewarding to be able to take smart risks, even though you're working with the smaller set of resources, and then to see those risks have high risk, high impact. I think for me, the lesson learned has been one of just being a good steward and being in a community where we are just really good stewards of opportunities and resources to do that sort of work and research that's oftentimes the work of unsung heroes. It's not super glamorous and it's not glamour and glitter all the time. There's a lot of really hard work that's invisible that goes into building evidence to make practices as best as it can be. We are doing this multi-site work, and one would naturally think that the distance would make the work harder and more cumbersome. But in actuality, I find it very energizing. I feel a strong sense of belonging and purpose to having an impact in a service system that I began my career in circa 2002. So for me, this particular partnership and project is just, it's very purposeful. It reminds me of the purpose of one's life's work and the potential scale of that. And that's just really exciting, and to be able to create that work together.
As they look ahead, the team hopes to firmly establish the effectiveness of their YCPEM intervention for parents in 3 key areas: their involvement in shared decision-making, engagement in services, and their perception of family-centered quality care. They are also working with program stakeholders, including parents, providers, and program leadership, to drill down on other factors that can support or hinder program implementation going forward. These data will be used to inform and scale the intervention for a more diverse range of early intervention programs at a regional and ideally national level. The team members shared some of their aspirations for the future of this partnership and what it could mean for children and family participating in early intervention programs.
I think we'd also really love for this to continue to expand. Right now, the project is really directed towards English-speaking families, and I think we'd love for this to be for Spanish-speaking families, and who knows, down the line, additional languages there as well, so that we can make sure that we're representing those families and that they have the same opportunities as our English-speaking families when it comes to being able to have their voice, like being the center and the front of these meetings.
I think early intervention is just the best thing ever. One of the things I love about the role that I'm in is I get to share widely the benefits that I have seen and heard from families who have participated in the program. And I absolutely love that early intervention really is family-based and family-focused, and the skills that our therapists are working on, the intention is always so that it increases the family's ability to engage and enjoy learning and spending time and experiences with their children. So early intervention, I think, is just absolutely amazing. And I would encourage, and I do encourage every parent that I run into, every grandparent, aunt, uncle, that if there's ever any type of concern or worry, to at least reach out. I want families to feel that their voice is heard, and that they have an opportunity, multiple opportunities and multiple ways to make sure that they're contributing, and that's reflected not only in the plan that we write down on paper, that helps us meet the requirements, but even ongoing in their weekly sessions, and that not only are their concerns addressed, but it also will hopefully open conversations into the wonderful and diverse cultures that we are so fortunate to have involved in early intervention, and that I've loved meeting and getting to learn as a service coordinator and as the engagement specialist.
It's interesting because we each see it, I think, in our own ways. Like, wow, wouldn't have ever thought I could accomplish that with this, right? And I think they experience it, and I experience it, and it's like, I think that's what's special about it, is it didn't realize we could reach that height, and then there's some unanticipated successes, and they're very sweet to see that we have more to discover and more to pioneer, but I think we're in a good rhythm. We're in a really good rhythm now.
Collaborative Endeavors is produced by me, Lauren Rieger, on behalf of the Center for Clinical and Translational Science, aka the CCTS, at the University of Illinois at Chicago. To learn more about the research discussed in this episode, visit the links in our show notes. The CCTS is supported by the National Institutes of Health's National Center for Advancing Translational Science through their Clinical and Translational Science Award. The views expressed in this podcast are our own. To learn more about how you can get involved in health research, visit ccts.uic.edu or follow us on Twitter at UIC_CCTS.